Tom Cruise has been my man crush since circa 2005, and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is just another reason why. So Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the 7th installment in the Mission Impossible series that has run since 1996. Can you believe it? Tom Cruise has been playing Ethan Hunt for almost 30 years now. As far as Part 1 movies go, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is one of the best that I have ever seen. I usually don't like Part 1, Part 2 movies because Part 1 inevitably never feels complete. It just feels like half of a movie that isn't satisfying, and it ends on an underwhelming cliffhanger because all the exciting shit is in Part 2. But that's not the case with Dead Reckoning Part 1. It tells a complete story that has threads that can lead into the second part of this. One thing I love about these Mission Impossible movies is the way they build the cast as the series goes. Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt is a given, of course, but then on top of that, you've got the principal players of Ving Rhames as Luther Stickle, Simon Pegg as Benji Dunn, Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa Faust, and these principal players have such fantastic chemistry, and you really feel they care about each other, having worked together for so many years. But beyond the returning cast, there's some new cast members as well, and my favorite by far was the beautiful Hayley Atwell as Grace. Her character I got such a kick out of, and she has great chemistry with Tom Cruise. It's quite playful at times, and they're so good together that you would think that these two have worked together before, but I don't think she has made a movie with Tom Cruise before. Henry Czerny returns after all these years as IMF director Eugene Kittredge from the first Mission Impossible movie, and that guy has not missed a beat since 1996. There are a lot of references to the first Mission Impossible in this film. There are also quite a few things in this movie that remind me of James Bond. Pom Klementieff plays this French assassin named Paris who's working for the main villain of the film, and while her character is not a direct reference to James Bond, I could see her character being a henchwoman in a Bond film. But the more direct references to James Bond, and I'm not giving away anything if you've seen the trailers, are the little yellow Fiat car that Hayley Atwell and Tom Cruise drive through Rome. That reminds me of the little yellow car in For Your Eyes Only. And there's also this scene in the climax on this train that reminds me a bit of From Russia with Love, the setting at least. And there's one scene that I'm not going to give away that reminds me of this movie, Tomorrow Never Dies. Without belaboring the plot too much, this movie's story concerns this mysterious AI that has become sentient, but the one way to control it is with this key that's in two halves, and all the world's governments are after it because they will be the rulers of the earth, essentially. And believing that this is too much power for anyone to have, Tom Cruise and his team are going after this key before the bad guys can get to it. Plot-wise, I'm not sure Dead Reckoning is quite as tight as Mission Impossible Fallout. I still think Fallout is probably the high watermark of the Mission Impossible series, but nonetheless, I still found Dead Reckoning Part 1 thoroughly entertaining, and I liked this idea of this amorphous AI being the villain. One thing I thought was less effective, though, was the human villain that they threw in to give Ethan Hunt a physical opponent to fight. He's played by Esai Morales, who does a fine job with what he's given, but he's not super developed in this movie. I hope they flesh him out more in Part 2. Visually, this movie is absolutely resplendent thanks to Christopher McQuarrie, who returns again to direct this movie. You know, the Mission Impossible series used to be the director's sandbox approach where they'd get a different director each time, but I'm really glad that they've settled on McQuarrie because he just has the perfect style for this series. The stunts, the action, Class A. We've all seen that fantastic scene of Tom Cruise doing that motorcycle jump off a fucking cliff. The showstopper for me by far is the climax on board the Orient Express. And what I love about it is that there's so much going on, be it important dialogue or the action, the fight scenes, but all of it feels very, very important, and you just hang on everything that's going on, and it never feels like it drags. And there are all these little things that just get added on as it goes along to make it more suspenseful. Now, it's time for a few spoilers. The big one, R.I.P. Ilsa Faust. I have loved the character of Ilsa ever since she made her appearance in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. When this movie gets to the point of her meeting her end, you can kind of see it going in that direction. You're hoping that she's not going to lose her fight, but then, sure enough, she gets a knife driven into her heart, and it's very sad to see her go. Haley Atwell's character Grace appears to be the replacement for Ilsa Faust. That is kind of the direction in which they appear to be going with her character, and I'm very happy that Haley Atwell's been added to the team. But could you imagine having the team of Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, and then on top of that, the double dose of beauty that is Rebecca Ferguson and Haley Atwell? I would have loved to have seen that, but unfortunately, we only get one babe at a time. I mentioned this movie has a couple references to the first Mission Impossible movie, one of which is part of the climax, which is on top of a train. If you have seen the original Mission Impossible movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. But then also, there's another part, which you may have seen if you've seen some of the promotional materials. There's a part where Kittredge tells Ethan, "I understand you're very upset." That, of course, echoes this famous scene.
I can understand you're very upset.
Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
And one thing I noticed about this movie too is that a number of times there are conversations that are filmed with those slightly canted angles, kind of like the way Brian De Palma did in the first Mission Impossible to create that sense of unease. The scene that reminded me of Tomorrow Never Dies is actually the opening scene of Dead Reckoning, and it reminded me of the stealth ship scene from this James Bond movie. Only the Dead Reckoning scene, what happens is there's this Russian submarine called the Sebastopol, which has been equipped with this mysterious AI, and the AI tricks the submarine crew into firing this torpedo at this supposedly hostile submarine. Only the hostile submarine isn't there. It's a phantom created by the AI. And then what ends up happening is the Russian submarine torpedo circles back and boom, it destroys the Russian submarine. The Sebastopol sinks to the bottom of the Bering Sea, and aboard its wreckage is the system core of this AI entity. So I guess Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 is going to be the hunt for the Sebastopol. I don't fucking know how they're going to do that. Is Tom Cruise going to do a stunt where he dives to the bottom of the fucking Bering Sea? Knowing how fucking insane that guy is, I wouldn't put it past him. The main human villain of this movie, who again is not the most developed character in the world, he is an enemy of Ethan Hunt from his past. And even though this may have overstuffed the plot a bit and dragged the story of Dead Reckoning down just a tad, I actually really liked seeing these glimpses into Ethan Hunt's past, which we have never seen in a previous Mission Impossible movie. It shows that the series is really trying to stretch in many directions, and through these glimpses into Ethan Hunt's past, we get to see how the IMF selects its agents. Basically, what the IMF does is it finds individuals who are desperate, people who are on the run from many foreign governments, people who have no shortage of enemies who wish them dead, and the IMF gives these people a choice. Join the IMF, do these impossible missions, or your life is forfeit. That's the decision that Ethan Hunt and everybody who has been in the IMF has made, and that is the decision that Grace makes in this movie, so she's going to be an IMF member going forward, and I can't wait to see that. So Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, not the best entry in the Mission Impossible series. I still think that honor goes to Mission Impossible Fallout, but it's a fantastic entry nonetheless. I was thoroughly entertained. Highly recommend you go see this in the movie theater, and Tom Cruise kicks ass. What more can I say? Thank you guys for watching to the end. Leave me a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel if you dig what you have seen today. And even if you don't dig what you've seen, thank you very much for sticking around to the end, because hate views still count. I'm Grega. You all stay beautiful. Cheers.